I will never forget in 1990, we played Argentina. And I was sitting in the bus, the row behind my big hero, one of my big heroes, Diego Maradona. He was a star, of course, worldwide with his skills, which was, exceptional. And he was also a kind of entertainer. And when we started the transfer from the airport to the hotel, he was the one, sitting in the first row, having the microphone, telling jokes, singing songs, and in a very easy and smart way, so that you could feel that the whole team, they belonged together, and Diego was their hero, and this was amazing. And then, of course, as soon as he left the bus, you cannot imagine, even in small Austria and small, nice Vienna, there were so many people from, I think, around the globe waiting there, singing and shouting. In the hotel, the hall was totally crowded. We needed security and things like that. I was thinking it must be nice to be a hero, but at the end, there are always upsides and downsides. And he was driven, by all the others. He was hunted. He was really a superstar, but I think it was not easy.
Hello and welcome to the Ronny Leber Show, where every week we bring you fascinating guests with inspiring stories of success and overcoming obstacles from the worlds of sports, business and entertainment. To support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell and hit the like button so that we can deliver you the best content possible. He started his professional career in soccer in the Austrian Soccer Federation. After 16 years, he transitioned to becoming the head project manager for the UEFA Champions League, being ultimately responsible for the organization of the Champions League finals. He was the head of the Austrian Bundesliga, as well as for the Union of the European Football Leagues. He's working in several functions in the worlds of soccer and brings his knowledge to the next generation, and recently even published his first book, which I have right here. I'm happy to have him on the show. Please welcome, here is Georg Pangl. Woo!
Hi, together. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to have you on the show. And when you're listening to your introduction, to all your accolades that you have achieved over the years, what comes to mind to you?
That I'm getting old. No, to be serious. I've had the privilege to serve for 35 years in international football or soccer. And I started with 20, and the funny thing that I've always been called by all those institutions I've been working for. I've been called, and unfortunately, the book is, for the moment, it's just in German. But together with you, Ronny, we are going to explain to the audience how it did come and how this can function. That a boy with 20 years old who doesn't know anybody from somewhere far in the countryside is being called from the Austrian FA, and later on UEFA Champions League and what you said before. So I think it's fun enough to discuss it a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really eager to dive in all the secrets and everything. Just before we start out here, you said when you were 20, you started out on this incredible journey. What was it that you actually wanted to become as a kid?
To be honest, as a kid, I thought, I'm living in a small village with about 800 inhabitants, and there was the plan, let's say 40 years ago, to have a small bank. And my dream was to become a banker in this small institute in our small village. But then, thanks God, I'm really grateful. Then the direction has changed, and I could spend really 35 marvelous years with every single moment, which was unique in soccer and football. And I've enjoyed it. It was very difficult sometimes. It was challenging. There was a heavy workload on my shoulders, and I have heavy weights. But at the end, I made so many friends like you, Ronny, and many, many others from all around the world, that I still feel very privileged to have done this journey.
Wow, incredible. So let's jump right into it. You already mentioned you were 20 years old. You actually were just at the time working for 1 year at a forwarding agency, or like an expedition agency, and you were there. And suddenly you got a call from the Austrian FA, like from the Austrian Soccer Federation, without knowing anybody. Tell us, how does that work?
Exactly. You are so right, Ronny. And once a day, I picked up the phone, and there was a guy from the Austrian FA on the other end of the line, and said, "Yeah, hello, Mr. Pangl, would you like to work with the Austrian Football Association?" And I told him, sir, I think it's the wrong number. You can go for a truck, for a whatever you need from Sweden. I was responsible for Sweden, imports Sweden. And I put back the phone. He called again. I said, Mr. Pangl, please stay in line. I wanted to ask you again, are you interested to work with us in the Austrian Football Association? And I was convinced that I was mixed up with someone. It was the wrong number, the wrong person, whatever. Then we met and they said, yeah, no, we wanted to meet you, Mr. Pangl. Fine. Let's go for a trial. And then I said, allow me one question. Why did you call me? I didn't know you. I just knew you from the newspapers. And then I said, yeah, okay, it's a long story. And during the recruiting process, they didn't find the right person, And then one of the colleagues there, a coach, he was many years ago, he was acting as a teacher in my school. It was a commercial school. And then he called and he asked the director of the school, is there anybody who was playing football and who is interested in football and who was probably, how do you say in English, class speaker, And then my director said, yeah, there's just one in our school. This is George, but he's working now with the forwarding agent. And so the first circle closed, and it was like a script, like in a movie. You can't do it better.
But you always had a passion for soccer, right?
Of course, when I could read the newspaper with about 6 years old, I started, reading sports and football, and then I started to play myself. I was not that privileged with my talent, but I liked to play, and I had a good time until I was 35. And yeah, as you said, there was a big passion, and then suddenly being, involved in the first time it was the under 16, under 18 national teams. We took part in a World Cup in Egypt. We played that time. We played USA. We lost 4-0, but it was so funny and exciting to me. Playing as an amateur, but then being in the whole business, being active. It was unique, to be honest. Yeah.
So you already started a bit, like you started out in the youth sector, but what were your tasks back then? Like besides taking care of youth teams?
I was the administrator of the academies, let's say. There are Austrian-wide academies with the clubs, and we were responsible for the program, for the coaches. This was one part. Then there were committees, as everywhere in football. It's in FIFA, there are committees, and it's in the Austrian FA, like in all the other FAs, there are committees, and you have to deal with topics. You have... this was my experience of quite old-fashioned and old-thinking people. You have to discuss about this interesting sport. So it takes always a while to convince those, let's say, powerful people. But it's everywhere the same. And this was on top with the altogether 3 youth teams, under 15, under 16, under 18, and then also with the national team. When we had a home game with the Austrian national team at senior level, I was always responsible for the guests. So I will never forget, in 1990, we played Argentina. And I was sitting in the bus, the row behind my big hero, one of my big heroes, Diego Maradona. I was in the same hotel. I was having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with them. I was at the training. I was close to them with my interpreter at that time. It was the same with AC Milan during the Champions League final in 1989 and 1995. So there were so many unbelievable experiences, and was
let's stay at this for a second, because I want to pick out 2 of those experiences, because of course I read about them in your book. So you mentioned Diego Maradona, and of course everybody in the world of sports and soccer knows who Diego is or was. And you also were writing about an episode with him that he really put on quite a show.
Yeah, he was a star, of course, worldwide, with his skills, which was exceptional. And he was also a kind of entertainer. And when we started the transfer from the airport to the hotel, he was the one, sitting in the first row, having the microphone, telling jokes, singing songs, and in a very easy and smart way, so that you could feel that the whole team, they belonged together, and Diego was their hero, and this was amazing. And then, of course, it was like, how can I say, it was like a family, because as soon as he left the bus, you cannot imagine, even in small Austria and small nice Vienna, there were so many people from, I think, around the globe waiting there, singing and shouting in the hotel. The hall was totally crowded. We needed security and things like that. So And that time already, I was thinking it must be nice to be a hero, but at the end, there are always upsides and downsides. And he was somehow, let's say we say in German, he was driven, by all the others. He was hunted. He was really a superstar, but I think it was not easy. And we all know about his further life, and what he has been obviously suffering. Like we didn't want him to do so, but was a unique experience.
Wow, I can imagine. And wow, really nice experience. Another experience, you already mentioned the security and so on, and you mentioned AC Milan. And one of the things that I actually read, which was quite surprising to me, that once you actually had to go as a double for Silvio Berlusconi, who was at the time not only the president of AC Milan, but also the prime minister in Italy. How did that come along?
Exactly. So there was the final in a nice hotel in the city, in Vienna, and there were a lot of meetings with the police and how to choose the way to go to the stadium and
For the Champions League final.
Exactly, for the Champions League final, you're right. And then, of course, when Mr. Berlusconi arrived, there were a lot of security precautions and things like that. And then a very last-minute decision from the local police was just to be really on the safe side in case of any whatever attack might be. They decided, it was hidden, so people couldn't see me. But I was asked to play the double of Mr. Berlusconi together with the interpreter again. I think he was doing it for the vice president Galliano at that time. And while we were entering the limousine, in the back door, Mr. Berlusconi, very easily he took another car and he went through the city without being recognized. And we went together with the bus, with police and blue light and so it was a big show. And I was playing the double of Berlusconi, and suddenly, we were driving that fast so that the big Mercedes car was jumping, and then we touched somehow, was it a stone or however you say, and then it was a big crash, and I thought there was a bomb attack, and I thought now I'm dead and I will wake up in heaven, but thanks God it was not the case. It was just a nice experience again.
But then you actually met him personally, right?
Yeah, and then when they really won the final, he entered the bus, the team bus. And the team bus, of course, with the families, with the wives and friends, was crowded. And I was in the very first row behind the driver with the interpreter. And he entered the bus, and it was like he appeared. And, he recognized me. I shook his hand, said, ciao, buongiorno. So, there's no need to say hello to me because I was nobody there. There were so many important people and sponsors and players. But, he had the feeling to shake your hands. And that's why at that time, to be honest, I was really impressed by him. He was an unbelievable, great and impressive personality.
Having dealt with so many incredible personalities throughout your career, first of all, did there ever come a moment when you were starstruck in a way, when you were like, oh my God, like, I cannot believe that I'm really there with this person on the one hand? And what was your experience having dealt with all those kinds of personalities? Because oftentimes it's when you actually meet the great ones is that they're human, they're just normal like everybody else. Or how was your experience?
Exactly. And as you showed before, my book, so the title is My Theater of Dreams. So my life still is now, although I'm having my own agency, but with my wife, with my kids, with my Labrador dog, my life is still a dream. And that time in football, it was really a dream in football. And, when having dealt, as you said, with so many personalities, the most interesting experience for me was that the real and the great personalities, they are much easier than the so-called C category of personalities. So that's what I experienced. The real great ones, they are easy and like you and me. And this was the most fascinating. And this is where I took a lot for my life, just to be easy. I'm not a great personality, but I learned to be easy, to be, to stay with both feet on the ground, and to be just humble and friendly. And that's what I experienced for my lifetime.
Would that also be your advice for somebody who wants to learn how to deal with high-profile people?
Just stay authentic, be as you are, ask questions. Don't think too much. Which question could I ask? No. do it as you feel, and yeah, I would say rely on your feeling. That's most important. And if the person is a great one, most of them they are, then you will see it's a very easy communication. So don't think too much. And I think especially in America and in the Americas, people are very easy compared to Austria and Europe. So I think that's ongoing in the US, for example.
I want to bring up two more names actually before we transition then to the UEFA. But in 1998, France became world champions, and the very first match after that was, luckily for Austria, it was in Vienna, because there was a match that was already promised before they became world champion. So it was really, really nice. And you had the privilege of picking up Zinedine Zidane as well as Didier Deschamps at the airport, and that was quite a ride, wasn't it?
Exactly. You know, they were playing that time with Juventus, so they arrived by private plane, of course. And I've had, again, as every to-do was a privilege, I picked them up from the airport. And as we said before, they were so easygoing, you know, no problem at all. And then I drove the car personally to the hotel. And then there was I had to stop in front of red light, and behind our car, and I had a branded car from the Austrian FA car sponsor, and obviously there was a Motorola driver, and obviously he could somehow realize or recognize that there were two great personalities in my car, and obviously he was so fascinated that he forgot to stop. So we had a light crash, and immediately the two superstars, they left the car, they took care about the driver. Thanks God, he was not injured and nothing. But I said to myself, he was opening his eyes, and there were Zidane and Deschamps, asking him if he's fine. So he also was thinking that he's in heaven now.
Yeah.
But these are really these priceless experiences. And thanks God, I was convinced by a good friend to write the book. I was never thinking to do so. And some of those stories are now for eternity in my book.
Did anybody else around you realize about the two people here, like about Zidane and Deschamps?
Yeah, of course there were a lot of people then, because the traffic had to stop, and then but everything was easygoing, and they were really behaving like you and me, and just being helpful and supportive to the guy was amazing. Yeah. And then we entered the car. The police was here, but nothing has happened. And then we left to the hotel, and it's a nice story.
Wow, beautiful. And then you came from the Austrian FA, and there are people in the world that don't even know where Austria is. And Austria is in the heart of Europe, a very small country in a way, but also powerful and in its own way, and very well connected. And so from the small village to the, let's say, rather small in international comparison Austrian FA, you came to the UEFA, which is basically the FIFA for Europe. So it's the European Football Association. And this is really powerful. Tell us how this first came along, because first you actually started as a venue director for Champions League matches, correct? And what is the venue director?
Exactly. And the reason why I was asked to act as a venue director was because I was doing the job of a tournament director of the under-16 European final championships, the final round in Austria. So we had a nice tournament, a lot of spectators, we had TV coverage, a lot of sponsors.
I was at the final, actually.
Sorry?
I was at the final.
Really? Very
Yeah.
good. So, yeah, and then I was asked by UEFA, as you said, the governing body of European football, to go for a report. And the question was, should I go for a one-pager or no? I did it my way. I made a big report, with endless pages explaining everything, why we were so successful. And then some days later, I received a call from Team Marketing. Team Marketing was the agency for Champions League of UEFA. And they invited me for a hearing to Amsterdam, to the Hotel Okura, one of the best hotels on the rooftop bar. There was another guy from Poland, and I didn't realize that it was a knockout hearing, either he or me. And obviously my English was a little bit better than his, and I'm still in contact with the guy, Kazimir Oleszek, he was called. And then I was in the middle of Champions League as a venue director. As you said before, this is the guy.
While still working for the Austrian FA.
Exactly. It was just part-time. I took some days off, and then I was invited always. At that time it was Tuesday or Wednesday. The first destination was Istanbul with Galatasaray. So I had to do the job there, flying there on Monday morning, coming back on Thursday. And then, as I said, it was my vacation. But it was another experience, priceless at the end of the day, to meet people, to see where we are in Champions League is one of the top products in football globally, as we know. So this was amazing. And, and I'm coming back to the easygoing persons with a very humble and easy approach to your team on site. Because as a venue director, you are the big boss. And I'm never a big boss. I'm just a colleague, and with this soft and humble approach to all the colleagues there, it was such a great and priceless experience, to deliver at the highest possible level in Champions League. And this lasted then for several years, and it was every single time it was a great experience.
One of the things that I read about that, because I think your first stop was Istanbul, as you just said, at the Ali Sami Yen Stadium. And for everybody that knows the world of soccer or football, you know that this is really, it can be challenging sometimes. Very emotional fans or supporters, and also, and even I read in a book that normally you either get sent there to be tested or when they want to get rid of you. So you came there and you had your very own approach, and it was a very different experience. Tell us about that.
Exactly. As I said before, for the first game, I had a coach like everyone. And this coach was an Englishman, and he didn't take care about translation. He was speaking like he was speaking. And I realized at the very first match day, when I had him as a coach on board, I made my notes. And then on the second match day, it was just, I was there on my own, and I had all the responsibility. And then out of the learnings, it's always, it's the personal relationship between the people you're working with, between the team and yourself. And when you're living as an example, whatever you're telling them, they do it. But just talking and then doing or thinking anything else, this doesn't work. And this was a priceless experience too. I was very close with the signage team. They were these guys taking care about the pyramid boards and all the signage in the stadium. And it's even not in the book mentioned, but I met them at breakfast the very first day. I didn't know them, they didn't know me, but I was going there. They had their shirts with Champions League. I said, "Hey, I'm George." And these were guys from Scotland, from England, from wherever, with their tattoos. And you were afraid if you looked at them. But with this first action, and then they said, "Oh, you are the venue director." "Yes, I'm George. So if you want, we can meet in the evening for a nice glass of whiskey." And they said, "Yes, George, all you are talking and you never stick to your promises." I said, "Why?" So of course it was me then meeting the guys downtown, paying 1 or 2 glasses of whiskey. And since then, they went for me, let's say, through hell. Whatever I asked them, they did it for me. If it was dangerous or not, they were believing in me. And this is the kind of leader you have to be in a team, with the easy guys doing just the pyramids, and also with the media guys and sponsoring the responsibles and so on. And this was really, I just can repeat my words. Sorry for this, but it was so great to experience this, to meet these people, and to see what you could do, even if you are empowered by someone. I was empowered by UEFA. But
the stadium director story, I think it's also very powerful.
Exactly. There was a difficult challenge for the stadium director to do. And as there was a very, how can I say, a difficult situation with my predecessor there. There was a tension, they couldn't really work together because the guy didn't treat them very well. And then I asked the interpreter, "Yeshim, could you ask the stadium director if he has time for me?" "But Georg, you are the venue director. You are the boss. If you do like this, he has to come here." I said, No, Yashin. Please ask him if I can come to his office." So he asked, "Yes, of course, anytime you want." Okay, so tell him I will be there at 11. Okay. Then we were drinking a chai. It was just a polite invitation. Then I said, "Yashin, please tell him that he's one of the best stadium director I've ever met." She was looking at me, and she was translating. And then he asked why. And I said, because it's it's a historic stadium, but it's so challenging. You have so many things to do which are not easy. And if you could do me the favor, to finish all your to-dos the day before the game is starting, then UEFA, myself, and all of us would be relaxed. And just to understand, for the predecessor, they always fulfilled their tasks 5 minutes before kickoff. So the guy from England, he was nearly exploding because it didn't work. But with this meeting, I explained him the process. He agreed, and since then we had a nice life. And every time when we met, he hugged me and kissed me, and so it was like father and son, because there was a lot of respect and appreciation to him and to his team. And this was another lovely story to experience. So that's what I wanted to say, is that normally you don't need power. You don't need to be powerful. If you have the right approach, then people, they will follow you, they will do it for you, and that's it. And this was a very, very interesting experience for life.
That's very beautiful. And it reminds me, actually, when Michael Jackson died, I saw a documentary, and it was also in the movie theaters, and there was a musician that they interviewed that was playing for him, obviously. And when he went there and he wanted to change something, he was going to him like, may I ask you something? And he was like, of course, I mean, we're here for you. Like, could you do this? Of course, I can do whatever you want. But it was really the way that you treat somebody else. Yeah. And then they will really go through fire for you.
Exactly, yeah.
Very beautiful. So that was still part-time. But when came the time when you actually transitioned from being like not anymore with the Austrian FA and then really being full-time at the UEFA?
There was a workshop in Zurich in Switzerland, and I have been asked by the responsible director of UEFA. It was Jacob Berel, the former general secretary of the Israeli FA, and we have met, I think, 20 years ago. And he said, Georg, I know you for so many years or decades. I would like to see you on my team. And then I said, it's so difficult. And no, Georg, don't tell me if it's difficult or not, just tell me when you will come. So at the end, Jacob convinced me to join his team on a full-time basis. So that's why I moved from Austria to Switzerland. And I did then the job of the regular season of Champions League. I was the project manager of the final in 2003 in Old Trafford, Theatre of Dreams. It's another link to my book's name. And the year after, it was of Schalke, 2004. And also the Super Cup finals in Monaco, and so I was the responsible guy for Champions League, and it was amazing. I was traveling today, it was Milan. The day after, it was Valencia. I took care about all these venue directors. I started once years ago as a venue director, and then I was the head of them. So I was responsible for their coaching, for their education, and so on. And it was really interesting for 2 years to be there. And then I wanted to settle with my wife. I got married in 2004, and we wanted to settle.
Before we go there, let's stay at those 2 years for a second before you come to the next, because organizing a Champions League final, Champions League final is a huge event. Like, give us maybe some numbers or something to understand and comprehend what it actually takes to organize a Champions League final.
I would start with this, that more or less 20 years ago, we started with the first site visit, let's say 15 to 18 months before the final took place. We had the first meetings, and of course you need a certain structure. You need domains. So we had several domains. We had domain leaders from the organizing club or LOC, local organizing committee, and also pendants from UEFA. And then you had a meeting, let's say every second, every third month. And for the experience, of course, all these domain leaders were invited to see the last Champions League final before they were on tour, So as we started 15, 18 months before, 12 months before their Champions League final, they could see. We were showing them what's going on, their domains. They were talking to the domain leader of the predecessing Champions League final, so they could catch a lot of experience. And then, of course, it went more and more in detail. And as you said before, it's most important is the security part, which last year was a very, very delicate issue, but also the sporting part and the ticketing and hospitality. And there was I think in Manchester, if I'm not wrong, there were about 6,000 VIP guests, to be treated. And we built a small village. And the year after of Schalke, it was already, I think, 14,000 VIPs. So it has been increased steadily year by year. And it was an amazing task and efforts, to organize this on top level with a top caterer. And it was the Austrian caterer, Do & Co. And they were arriving with 18 extra long trucks, delivering all the things they needed just to take care about these 14,000 VIP guests. And for me, the scaring thing was, at midnight, the day on the final, at midnight, this village for 14,000 guests has been more or less destroyed. It was demolished, and you had to do the same task the year after, and then it was again more VIP guests. So always more and more and more, and this was the challenge. And now, if you allow me, this was then at the right moment, obviously, a call from the Austrian League. And before settling down then in Switzerland, I was asked, and again, I was called. I didn't apply for it. I was called by the vice president of the Austrian Professional Football League to meet him and the president that time. This was a billionaire. He was even in Canada. He was there active with car parts producing, Frank Stronach. He was the president of the league. And they invited me for a hearing. But I wasn't interested because I wanted to move to Switzerland that time still. And after this hearing, where I think 3-4 times I declined. I said, no, I'm going to Switzerland. And at the end, they convinced me that it could make sense to take over the Austrian Professional Football League as a CEO, what I've been doing then for 10 years. So this is the next chapter in the book.
So Frank Stronach, the billionaire, and you actually mentioned also in your book that he was very, very convincing. For somebody that has never dealt with a billionaire, which is probably most of the people, what made him so convincing?
It wasn't obviously him. It was more or less me, because I was relaxed. I had no idea what they wanted to discuss, to be honest. And then I said, we need a new CEO in the Austrian League. I said, yeah, but Mr. Stronach, you must not say Mr. Stronach. You must say Frank. I said, yeah, Frank, but I'm moving to Switzerland now. I'm dealing with Champions League. Yeah, Georg, but we need a guy like you. And then I gave him 2 or 3 reasons why I'm not the guy. Because, he made, sorry to say this, but he made some mistakes when he was also club president and, in dealing with people. And I told him exactly, if you do this, what you have been doing with your coach, this is unacceptable for me. And then, he was intervening. It's a special story, but he as a president and as a billionaire, he was intervening when a player was suspended because he did something wrong. He was spitting on somebody. And of course, in the background, the club presidents were talking and giving calls to him. And then he started to intervene publicly. And I told him, Frank, if you ever would intervene when a player is being suspended, when I'm CEO in the Austrian League, I would kill you. Sorry, this wording. I would kill you. I would never allow this. So that's why I will never get in conflict with you. So that's why I'm going to Switzerland now. And, with all these arguments, he said, no, Georg, we need a guy like you. So he was getting crazy. And at the end of the day, I said, is this true? Is there a hidden camera? Is it really true? So, of course. So then at the end, because I was so relaxed and I could tell him what I wanted to tell him, because I was not relying on the job. In the other case, I would have probably been on my knees and say, yes, Mr. Stronach, yes, Mr. Stronach. So I was easy. And I said, Frank, please apologize if I'm too rude, but I have to tell you this and that. And obviously this was the right way. And for me, it was another priceless learning. You have to be authentic. You have to tell people if they're billionaires or not, what you're thinking, what you're convinced of. You have to stick to your values. And this was obviously the right way to deal with one of those billionaires that time.
Another funny learning, actually, that I took out of your book was when you then were actually a CEO of the league, and then you had a meeting with him, and then you came with a big binder with all kinds of things inside, and there was another person who told you, what are you doing with the binder? And yeah, I brought all the topics. And he's like, you're never going to get the time to get through all of that. Just focus on one thing. What's the most important thing, and focus on that. Is this something that you learn out of that as well?
Exactly, Ronny. That's a very important part of my learning. And I experienced it with Frank Stronach, a billionaire, but I also experienced it when I visited, for example, Karl-Heinz Rummenige, a good friend of mine who was that time chairman of the European Club Association and also chairman of FC Bayern. I flew there. There was one topic we discussed. We agreed on whatever result. And then this was done. And I thought, because I learned this at UEFA, to be honest, with team marketing, and all my experience was, to have checklists. But going through checklists is, let's say, it's not for the top level of people you're dealing with. It's for the top management,
operational,
for the operational management, but not for the top guys who are responsible for strategies and important decisions. And this is really a very important learning for all listeners too. If you have to deal with a very important topic, just focus on this. Leave all the others aside. And if you have the chance, for 2 minutes to discuss something with the person you're going to meet, just focus on the most important, on the AAA topic, and the others, they are not so important. So there can't be 14 or 20 topics with the same importance. Take the first and most important one, discuss it, agree on it, and then it's done. And then you can build up as a kind of foundation on this, and next time you go for the next one, and so on. And this was, as you said correctly, it was a very, very important learning.
And it's very fascinating. So when you are actually preparing, then you're picking out one thing. You're like, okay, what's the most important or most pressing thing that we need to discuss? Do you have a strategy also on how to be most convincing then, or how to prepare to be the best prepared as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what counts is arguments, of course. But then, when you're arguing in favor of that topic, whatever you want to have decided, and then I lean back, and then I let the opponent tell his arguments, and then say, yeah, of course, these are the basics, what you learn with if you book the Harvard concept and things like that, the negotiations. These are the basics in management. But at the end of the day, it's also your personal approach, your emotion, your passion you bring into a matter. And once I had a meeting with the president of a club. He was very powerful, and there was really a big issue. It was not that the amount was not that high, but the principle. And he said, I will attack the Austrian league because this is not fine and fair. And in my opinion, the behavior of the league and from my side as a CEO was fair. And I was really for 1 hour fighting for my solution. And at the end of the day, he said, Georg or Mr. Pangl, we have two different positions, and that's why we have to have different opinions. But what I'm really admiring is that you're fighting so hard for your position, for defending the league's interest. And so this was a nice compliment, to be honest, from a person who is normally was a very, very hard and tough negotiator. And still, when I'm meeting him, he's always saying, Mr. Pangl, when we put you somewhere in the desert without water, you will be the one who will be surviving. So these are still, after so many years, these are nice compliments. Yeah.
Since this show is also about talking about like overcoming obstacles, and especially in your Bundesliga career where you were the CEO, you started out after a month, basically you realized that the league is basically bankrupt. Then just a few years later, there was a big betting scandal inside the league. So all those obstacles, what tips could you give somebody to overcome obstacles that are in their way? Especially when it's something like in your case that is not just like that you know it, but basically the whole country knows it.
Yeah, of course. Sometimes it's really not easy, but I've had the pleasure to rely on a good team. And of course, as a top guy, you're responsible for recruiting your team. So this is the first job to be done. But then when you have a team, and for example, with the betting scandal, as you said, I've had a kind of war room. There were daily news on the betting, on the main news on TV and radio and so on. And we had more or less permanent meetings. There was the legal guy, there was the commercial guy, there was the PR guy, and there was another one, and myself, and then we discussed. And what I always tried to how can I say, to bring the message in a very easily understandable way to the audience, because what we were discussing was impossible to convey. But then I said, I'm playing the role of the viewer in front of a TV. how could I explain this from this legal perspective or from this commercial perspective? I have to say it in some easily understandable words. And this is what then was my learning, to break it down, and when you are in front of TV, you always have maybe some 30 seconds or whatever. The easier you're going to explain a very difficult topic, the better it is for the audience. And even if you are then, how can I say, somehow empathic, that you to try not to judge, but to create understanding. This was a very, very important learning. And everything what I've been doing in these 35 years was based on my values. I have a value catalog. Thanks God, I got from my family, from my parents. And I'm that old-fashioned guy that I still go to church. I believe in the one high above us. And with this value catalog, with my faith, with my belief, I overcame all these obstacles, however difficult they have been. And this was another interesting learning. Sometimes you think this is impossible, this will not work. And at the end of the day, even when I was attacked, let's say 2 weeks after I have started my job, because there was obviously a verbal agreement with my predecessor when it came to, to a fund where money was distributed to the clubs. The president of a club said, Georg, if you don't stick to this, and this was really an unfair deal. He wanted to get 90% of the overall fund for one club out of 20 clubs. And then he said, he was really threatening me. Georg, I warn you, if you don't stick to this. I said, do you have it in written? No, it was just a verbal agreement. If you don't stick to this, I will sack you. You will be sacked within a few days. You will see. I said, okay, then feel free. Then there's nothing to do for me here, because this is an unfair deal. And if you're threatening me now or not, I cannot accept this. So feel free to sack me. But it took 10 years, and then even then he wasn't able to sack me. So based on values and your personal values and your value catalog, you can overcome every challenge and obstacle.
And then also you had another international chapter, which was the head of the European football leagues. First of all, for many out there who are like, what is that? What is actually the European football leagues, and what does it mean?
It was in 2006, I think. I was founding member as a CEO of the Austrian League. We were 13 visionaries or crazy guys, however you want to say. And we signed a constitution in London with the top 5 leagues and some others like the Austrians. And I was sure that time already that it makes sense to have a union of professional football leagues, with the Premier League, with La Liga and smaller leagues. And meanwhile, now there are 37 leagues. It's a union of leagues. They just pay a small part as a fee. And there is an office in Switzerland. And they are one of their main stakeholders, meanwhile. You have UEFA. They're responsible for 55 national associations, like the Austrian FA, the Germans, and so on. Then you have the European Club Association, representing just the top clubs, like Bayern and some other medium clubs from all over Europe. Then you have FIFPro, which is the players' union, representing the players. And then you have the European leagues. And these are the 4 stakeholders which are meeting now when very important decisions have to be made, like revenue distribution of Champions League and things like that. So European leagues is playing a very important role in European football. And meanwhile, when I was CEO there, we created a World Leagues Forum. So there are, I think now, about 60 leagues around the globe, which are under one umbrella, acting at FIFA level, at the global level, when it comes to very important topics in football. So this is, in a nutshell, explained what the European leagues are. And they have an office in Nyon, in Switzerland, near Geneva, where also UEFA and the European Club Association has their offices. So you have short ways. You can meet for lunch, for dinner, discuss behind the curtain things, and then you prepare it formally for the committees.
Wow. So you were basically the general secretary, yeah, for 5 years.
Yeah.
And now you're doing your own projects.
Exactly. I'm the CEO and the owner of the Pangl Football Group, and I can tell you it makes a lot of fun, and it's a pleasure, to use all the contacts and to do and to work for those projects and to work with those people I like. And there are mainly projects which are, in relation with sustainability. I've just had a meeting before when it comes to photovoltaic. You say it in English, photovoltaic on the roofs of the stadia. When it comes to several topics, my dream is to create a tree league, which means a kind of green league, and a green shoe for the, not for the best scorer, but for this football player who is able to attract and to motivate most of the followers to doing some challenges in saving energy and saving CO2 and so on. So this is my direction now after so many years in football. I would like to stay in football, but in combination with sustainability topics, and this really pleases me.
That's very fascinating. For some, really, I think, and also it's really important for the planet and for the future that we're actually all going to. When listening to your story, and it's an incredible story, for somebody who is just starting out, who is like, I would love to work in the sports industry, or I would love to work in football, in soccer, what advice could you give to that person?
As you can read it everywhere, you never should give up. Try it again. Don't try it only 10 times, try it 100 times. And if you have this resilience you need at the end of the day, and this is where I'm convinced of, if it's your way that you will work in football, then you will do it. If it's not, you can try it for 1,000 times, you will not make it. But again, in case you're really fascinated of football, you can apply as a volunteer for the World Cup, for example, in 26 or whatever. So there are always some small niches where you can try it. And if you know someone, contact him, try to give you advice, as you said now. So if your way is determined to be a part in football, you will make it. Otherwise, you will find any other challenges which will make you happy. And if it's sustainability or whatever, if you're going to be a teacher, I don't know. There will be so many nice jobs where good people are needed, and will be very easy. So
you said if you know someone, like oftentimes you start out with nobody, like also like yourself, and then you build your network. How important is networking for you?
To be honest, I was not really thinking about it. And when I started, as you said it, I've never had a career plan. Nowadays, you have to have a career plan. You're going to study, and then you're doing this and that. And I was really, every single day, I was just happy in what I was doing. And even it was a very boring or easy job. Sometimes you have to do this. But I was happy. I was smiling. I was doing my job. And once there will be the opportunity, there will be an open door or an open window. And then, of course, you have to use this chance. You have to go through. If you're hesitating, if you don't know yes or no or maybe. So sometimes when you have and there are just not so many opportunities, you have to be brave. You have to say, okay, I'll try it out. If it works, fine. And if I fail, that's normal. You will stand up and you will try it again. So very easy.
You've seen a lot of changes in football, in the world of football globally.
Yeah.
Where do you see that football is heading also now, since Gianni Infantino is in office? You actually met him when he was still at the UEFA, the legal guy, so to say, and you were also working there. How do you think that he's going to steer the future of football forward?
As you said, I know Gianni very well, and I met him also recently at the FIFA Congress or wherever. And to be honest, in Europe, people are sometimes having a very, very narrow-minded view. But we must not forget that there are 211 national associations being FIFA members, and Europe is just consisting of 55. And Gianni is European. He knows, of course, how European football works, but he also knows what the needs are in global football. And if this is now the additional programs he's doing, he was organizing a unique World Cup, of course, with the host in Qatar. The next one will be even more promising, and there will be more net revenues of obviously 10, 11 billion. He will again reinvest in football. He's doing social projects, football for school and whatever. So Gianni is doing a good job, and the Europeans have to, let's say, to widen their view, because they are just seeing themselves. We have Champions League, we are Europe, okay, nice. Where probably football started 20 years ago. But I think the Europeans have to widen again, as I said, their horizon. And from this perspective, Gianni Infantino is doing a good job. And if you and me, if we were presidents of an association somewhere in Africa, and Gianni is doubling or tripling our income, what we can reinvest in football, we wouldn't have any reason to have any doubts in the FIFA president, because he's over-delivering. And now there are 48 teams in the World Cup, which are, in my humble opinion, too many. But according to those who have the chance now to be qualified for 26 for the World Cup, it's a big step. But again, 48 teams out of 200, it's nearly 25% which are qualified for a World Cup. You can have the one perspective when you say it's too many, or you could say, no, it's fine. We should be open for many other teams from all the 6 confederations. And this is the politics what Gianni is doing. And obviously, for the majority of the national associations, again, mostly outside of Europe, he's doing a great job. And from his perspective, if I'm asked to judge, I just can underline that Gianni is doing a good job. Again, the Europeans are having probably a different view, but it's their right.
Georg, this has been a fascinating conversation with you. If somebody is inspired, if somebody is like, I would love to know more, I would love to work with you, how can they find you?
With Pangl Football Group, you will find me, my website, you will find me in the net. And it will be my pleasure, really my pleasure, to answer every single inquiry, whatever is needed personally. And just can invite people to believe in sports in general, not only in soccer and football, and to become part of this fascinating world.
Beautiful. Any last 30-second final thought that you want to share?
Ronny, it was my pleasure. I'm grateful for the invitation, and I do hope that you, of course you could, but I could convey the one or the other interesting message for your viewers and for the audience.
Thank you so much. I'm privileged to have had you on the show. And so one more time, give it up, Georg Pangl. Woo!
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end. To make this content even more valuable for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts, and also share this video with somebody you care about who absolutely needs to see this. Thank you very much. Have an outstanding day and see you next time.